You made it. Welcome to the table. You're just in time to make a dice roll.
Wait, for what? What kind of roll are we making?
We're trying to figure out how the system works, so we'll be making an investigation check. Want to do the honors?
Oh, sounds good. I have proficiency in that one. Oh, that's a nat one.
Well, this should prove interesting, if not at least entertaining. Welcome to the Nat One Nerds podcast. Welcome to the table, everyone.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Nat One Nerds podcast.
We are excited to bring you to the final episode of our exploration arc of Roll Table for Two by Fights and Fancy.
Yes. We finally made it to this episode.
We do apologize that this episode's coming out late, but with the teething baby and all the other responsibilities of life, we just totally spaced, unfortunately, and we do apologize for that. But, as we said, we're glad to be here and give our final impressions of the system and give it its overall grade.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe this will be the final episode for a little while that you hear my voice. Hopefully, we're hoping Brandon will be back here in the next couple episodes.
Yeah.
To rejoin the Nat One Nerds group.
Yeah, I talked to him and he said he's pretty much settled into Indiana and he's ready to jump back in. So
Good.
He should be back on the next episode.
Sweet. We love that.
Yes. But I've been having a lot of fun exploring the system with you. So,
Well, yeah.
But I'm biased.
Let's jump into the final review.
Yeah. So what were your overall final impressions of the system now that we played a session of it?
I was going to say, I think we've discussed this, that, we really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed the role-playing aspect between the two of us a little bit more than in other systems that I've played in, just because it was nice to play with you as, a co-player and not a DM. You know, because you're not worried about controlling the story or, whatever's going on. I think the part that I struggled with a little bit was I think there was the combat piece that I was like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And, using the skills and abilities pieces was a little confusing sometimes. In the drinking contest, there was that whole table of stuff, and we're like, oh. But other than that, no, I really enjoyed it, and it was a very unique system to play in. So I'm kind of excited to try it again without recording it to see if we're more comfortable playing it that way. Not that we're not comfortable playing it in front of a microphone, but
yeah, it's definitely been a while since the two of us were in a TTRPG group where we were both players.
Yeah.
Because for a while it has been me as the DM/GM.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since we've both just been players, and to have a system that didn't require a GM at all, and for us to just dive in together,
yeah, and
was really fun.
Yeah, I think that's what made this so fun, was that it was just the two of us, because whenever we've dived in and been players together, it's always been in a group setting, and not one-on-one where we can truly because, surprise, surprise, we both have really similar styles of role-playing, and it's hard to sometimes do that in a bigger group setting. So being one-on-one and being able to role-play the way that we like to role-play was really fun.
Yeah. I think the biggest advantage for a system like this is that because it's just designed for two players, it takes away a lot of sources of stress that come from other TTRPG systems. There's no planning. There's no prepping. There's no scheduling conflict anymore, practically. And as you just said...
Scheduling conflict.
As she points to her son. And the other thing, too, I think, that you just said that I didn't really think about was that the playstyles. Because we both share similar playstyles, there's no need for a session 0 in this case.
Yeah.
Where you have to kind of set, okay, this is kind of how I play.
Well, no, but I think in a way we did that together anyways, because Parker and I created our characters kind of together off the podcast, while we did an episode where I fully created my character, but we kind of had the basic idea. And so we knew each other's character, but it wasn't like I didn't give you my 19-page backstory, you know?
Yeah.
So it was still fun to be able to learn each other's character while still, you know, knowing a little bit about it. Like, we both knew we were going to play thieves, and we, you know, but we decided we wanted to be different archetypes, you know, and so it all around was a cool experience to be able to role play with you from a character from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because the one time that we did that, my character killed George, and that was really sad.
Yeah.
And then just out of my other character, Aura, she was like, "Get away from me with you," you know?
Yeah.
So it was fun to have a character that was like, "Oh, we're friends? Sweet, let's be friends," you know?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. We technically did have our own version, however simplified and short it was.
Mm-hmm.
We did have our own session 0. That's a good point that you bring up, and I'm glad you did. But again, it just makes everything so much more streamlined.
Yeah, well,
because again, as I said, it takes away all those potential stress-inducing aspects of TTRPGs and allows 2 players to just dive into an already prepared adventure story.
Well, and I think the book itself gives the session 0 because remember we read like the background of the monster we were fighting and like the setting that we were going to be in. So the book itself was a session 0 without having to formally like sit down to play a session 0.
That's true. That's very true.
Because, you know, we read about the ivy fell and then we read about the grime before we even got into the story.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the session 0, we picked the background of the special night. So again, further session 0 where you're still developing your character and it gives you a chance to talk about that. So the book in and of itself is a session 0.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool because I didn't even think about that until you were like, we didn't really have to have a formal session 0, but in a way we did.
Yeah.
You know, receiving background from the book about what was coming.
Yeah, but and I like how you bring this up because again, like we did have our own session 0, but again, it wasn't necessarily a formally planned session 0 where you did have to, because in other TTRPG settings, it's always a good idea, like maybe during character creation for the group or something like that, like to sit down and be like, okay, what are people's expectations? What's off the table? What's okay to talk about? What's some things we should skip over or avoid altogether?
Yeah.
Like, you know, making sure that everybody's
okay.
Yeah, everybody's a cohesive author, essentially, of the story. But because it's just 2 players, the book's able to just be like, okay, here's the adventure.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, we both sit and talk about what we want to talk about and create as far as characters, then we're good to go. I like how the book was able to provide lots of options for character creation, but not be as overwhelming as, say, Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder or Starfinder TTRPG systems, because those have lots of character options. This one provided you just enough character options to feel like you could truly create something unique to you without overwhelming you with options, because once you pick those options, it was like, okay, pick one of these 3 things, and that's how your character starts.
Yeah.
And then you level up as you finish each session. So that's really, really nice. And it just streamlines so much.
Well, and I still liked the freedom of being able to play to your character. Mm-hmm. Even though it was kind of like we thought it was going to be, like the Choose Your Own Adventure book. Yeah. You know, we still had the option to play or to not play. It wasn't like, oh, you have to make a group decision. And I think that was nice, still being able to like play to the cockiness or the non-cockiness of our characters.
But kind of as you said, I think for me, but again, this may be just our Dungeons & Dragons background that's kind of speaking here, which is fair. The combat was a little less dramatic than we're used to. Mm. But I think overall, for what the system is, though, I thought the combat was fine, ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I did enjoy, like, essentially killing the enemy myself. It was kind of fun.
But, one thing that in our last episode where I interviewed Poppy, one of the creators of it from Fights and Fancy, she made it clear that, especially in combat scenarios, it's different than D&D because it's not fully centered on combat. It's more of a, this happens to be the medium, to further engage in your two characters' story together. It's a unification thing.
Yeah.
So, like, when we did it, what ended up happening was that you kind of, quote-unquote, tanked the bear, and I completely 100% supported. I never attacked the bear. I always continue to give you buffs and abilities and increase your AC and all this different stuff to help you tackle the bear.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these abilities are, if you interweave them together between your two characters, that's ultimately what makes you strong. And I kind of like that about the system, is that it encourages your two characters to be like one unified two-person party. So there's less likely to be contention, both in-game and out-of-game, because it is just two characters, two players. And as I said before, you can just do 15 minutes of a session, you can do half a session, you can just sit down and do a full session, depending on your timetable. But it's simple to be like, leave it on the table and come back to it later.
Yeah.
So
I do think the one thing that I would have done differently is printed that battle map out, because I think it would have made it more engaging for both of us to be able to like move our own. Yeah, I think we did our best with what we had, but I think that's the one thing that I would change, is printing out the physical map.
Yeah, no, that's what I would have done differently too. Make it feel more properly like a TTRPG. Yeah, because we both like the in-person feel.
Yeah, so because I think it would have engaged both of us better, and it might have been a little bit easier to feel like, not necessarily that it was more balanced, because I feel like we still enjoyed it, but give the option for it to feel that way, you know?
Yeah. I think ultimately it is kind of what Poppy was talking about in the last episode, and kind of what we concluded, and I told her this, was that this system is for everybody, and this is kind of a system that, because initially with my, our knowledge so far in the TTRPG world and other systems, usually when people wanted to get into TTRPGs in general, some people wanted to try D&D because that's the most popular, and there's reasons for it. But if I felt like somebody was open-minded and just wanted to get into TTRPGs in general, I would usually recommend Fate Accelerated, because it's a pretty simple system. Yeah. But honestly, this might be, assuming that they don't mind being in a quote-unquote smaller group, aka 2 people, this system would be actually, I think, even better. Yeah. Because it is a lot more streamlined, because once you have your character, you just follow the story. Yeah. And it tells you. And when you come to those crossroad decisions in the story, it does a decent job of clearing which way to go. There's a couple times where we had to double back and read stuff, but honestly, it wasn't that bad at all. No. And I feel like every choose your own adventure, there's a couple of those decisions where like, wait a minute, like you go back, but ultimately, it's a great system, and I think it's safe to say we definitely will continue playing it, because we do have the second one. We do. So I think we do that one on a date night where we don't have our little guy, so that way we could focus completely on playing, because I think that would also change the experiences. We were trying to keep him quiet while playing it. Yeah, because he's so young, we're trying to limit how long and how often babysitters come, just because we're wanting to make sure he's well underway with his development. But yeah. No, this is definitely a system where, kind of like other TTRPGs, if you're going to immerse yourself, and take the time and find the babysitter, carve out that time where it's like, okay, anything that's super overly pressing has been either taken care of or can be on hold for, at the minimum, at least, a few hours. Yeah. Like, it's not a big deal. Yeah. But this ultimately is a great system, so I suspect that it's going to get high grades here in a second. So, shall we jump into the grading rubric? Yeah. Perfect. Character creation. Score of 1 to 10.
1's the worst, right?
1's the worst, 10's the best. At least that's how we're going to do it for this one. I feel like it changes sometimes. For this exploration arc, 1 is worst, 10 is best in this case.
I would give it like a 9.
Yeah. Honestly, I would. I think a 9 is also a pretty fair one. I like that. Just because there's options, but it's not like you pick your options and then it just kind of...
Well, I also think for me, I never actually, like, read anything in the, like, book myself. So I think that I would go back and do that differently, too. It's like, obviously I didn't pick anything bad, but, like, read it for myself and, like, you know, so.
Yeah, because there's 3 classes. There's fighter,
but you read them to me.
Yeah.
So I didn't get a chance to, you know, like, look at it myself, like, kind of, you know, in D&D, you know, it's like, here's your options. Which one do you think? And then you can, like, flip through the book. I didn't really have chance to do that.
Yeah.
Or hands to do that this time. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the 3 classes, fighter, thief, and mage, is pretty well-rounded overall for a fantasy setting, because then the archetypes really... Because the classes are truly very broad. I feel like D&D classes are a little bit less broad.
I feel like they can be very niche. Like, you have to... They're very, like, specifically tailored. Whereas I feel like with the roll table for 2, it's less like that. It's like, you could go this route, or you could go, you know...
Yeah.
Put your foot in a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting because when doing the interview with Poppy, she mentioned that the thief charmer subclass of thief was essentially their version of a bard. Like, it was the closest thing to a bard you can get in roll table for 2. That's not quite how I played him. I played him kind of more as a charlatan.
Yeah.
Con artist almost.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite a con artist, but
that's
something
like,
along those
that's
lines.
Like that's the interpretation of it.
Yeah,
you know?
and it didn't necessarily go super against the description, or and it fit with what I was doing. So
yeah.
No, yeah, I think it's pretty streamlined. There's still some options.
So average grade is a 9.
Yeah, I would just jump on that. I would also agree with the 9.
Okay.
Role playing. I'm gonna give it like a 7.
I was gonna say probably like 7.5.
Okay.
I think I liked that it specifically spelled out times that you could role play.
Yeah, I did appreciate that, because the way the system works is it tells a story, and then it has, like, obviously you can role play at any point.
Yeah.
But, like, the system itself, there's certain points where they're like, okay, this is a this is a prime moment to role play and kind of figure out what your characters do, because usually you would do that before a crossroads decision kind of came up. I feel like it would have at least one before each one, if I'm remembering correctly.
That, or there was the like breakfast conversation, or like right before we went to sleep at night. You know.
Yeah.
It was like, what are you doing? You know. Mm-hmm. And then we had the conversation. We rolled that conversation about like the memories of, like, you know, the past. So.
Yeah, I did appreciate the system, as you kind of said, giving specific times where, like, okay, this is a good time to role play, and here's a couple tools to help with that role play.
Yeah.
Which was really nice.
So.
The reason why I gave it kind of a lower, like, not that it's a low score.
I was going to ask that. Like, what would you do? What would you wish was different?
I think there wasn't anything in the system that it could really do. Just because it is kind of more or less a choose your own adventure type thing. Uh-huh. There's, outside of those times where you could really roleplay, like, you could roleplay outside of those moments, but it's definitely a lot harder because you're almost reading it like a storybook. And then once you come to those roleplay moments, that's when you can really roleplay. Yeah. If that makes sense. But I don't know if there's anything I would necessarily do differently. Yeah. That's why I didn't give it a super low score, because, number one, I wouldn't have done that anyway, but I still wanted to give it a decent score.
Well, I also think it got better while we continued playing. Mm-hmm. Because it's been a while since we've, like, role-played just the two of us. Mm-hmm. And so I think once we got more confident in how to play, and we, you know, got a little adjusted to our characters, I think our role-playing was better. So I think that's one thing that I would try and do differently, is just not be so awkward right off the bat. You know, make it easier to play.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think the other thing too with roleplay in the D&D or a Pathfinder setting where there's multiple people is that you have the opportunity to, if you're not entirely sure, other people as they roleplay can help step in, but then also give you opportunities based on what their character's saying or what their character's doing. It could trigger something your character might say or do in response. But with us, it's just the two of us, so I think it takes a little bit, a tad more effort, for lack of a better way of saying it, to get into that role playing.
Yeah.
But I felt like we definitely got more comfortable as it went along just naturally. So the system ultimately did do a fair job at helping with roleplay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Combat.
I would give it like a 5.
Yeah, I was about to say I'll give it a 4. Just because I feel
but
like...
again, it's not an issue with the... It's not an issue with the way combat was run, because it made sense, like, rolling the opponent's turn and rolling to move and, like, that kind of stuff. But it's just I think where I got really confused was using the table of, like, feats.
Abilities?
Yeah, for the enemy. Like, I got really confused with that and trying to build that in and trying to understand that piece of, like, to do something on your turn, you have to use an ability. It just is really...
I think what also threw you off is that you're so used to being able to just have free actions that don't... Because I feel like with the abilities, to, again, compare it to D&D just because that's so popular, that abilities almost feel like spell slots. And once you run out, you're out.
Yeah.
Like, and it's
well,
like, where's the cantrips
playing...
or where's, like, just... Why can't I just run up and stab it?
Yeah.
Like, why is that an ability? Like,
yeah,
why can't I just...
and that's the thing is I'm used to playing characters that are, you know, draw a bow and shoot, or I got 2 daggers, stabby stab, you know.
Why does it cost something to...
Because I was paying every time to stab the bear, so I just... That ability piece is still a little shaky for me. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to use it for a character that's technically an NPC was kind of hard.
Yeah.
So... That's my one thing.
Yeah, I would agree with most of that. But again, I think the point of the system wasn't necessarily, it's not D&D or combat heavy. I think the system is one of those systems that definitely focuses far more on roleplay.
I also think it might have been better.
And so therefore combat then doesn't really become combat anymore. It's just like a tool for further roleplay. Yeah.
I think that may be a difference too, that I kind of wish was that there was like a smaller combat built in, so you got familiar with it before you made it. Because like we had the drinking contest and we kind of got familiar with the way that worked. Yeah. Then when you did the cleaver contest, we were like, okay, we know how to do this now. Yeah. And so that I kind of wish that there had been like a smaller combat before the big combat, because like the combat with the bear was like the climax of the story, and so I felt like we didn't necessarily feel the urgency of it because we were trying to figure out how to do the combat.
I will say that the first session essentially is a tutorial for Roll Table for Two, and I feel like those carnival events was quote unquote the mini combats or the mini ways to use abilities to prep you.
I guess that's true. We didn't ever really use them, because
the other thing you got to remember too is that we skipped a whole entire event. We didn't do the barrel racing, so so that's the thing, is that we couldn't. We didn't do the barrel racing, so that was one event. It could have helped us if we had done that. That might have helped us better get used to abilities just a tad more. So I'm not trying to. I think the system, the way it is great, but just looking at just the combat in comparison to other systems, it's definitely on the lower end. But again, with that score, you have to keep in mind that that's not the point of the system. It's just role playing.
And again, we're comparing it to all the systems that we've played. Like, this isn't just based off of D&D, because we've played D&D, we've played, like, together, the two of us have played D&D, we played Call of Cthulhu together.
Yeah.
And we've played a Fate Accelerated together, right? I feel like we've played something else together.
One Ring.
Yes, that's what it was. I was like, I don't think I was on the Fate Accelerated one, but no, we have. Because didn't we do one with one of a group of my siblings or something?
Yes. Yes.
To, like, test it out?
Yeah, we did.
So.
Yeah, and the thing is, Fate Accelerated
Yeah,
didn't
because
do
we
great.
did, like, a Renaissance thing with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to compare it to Fate Accelerated also got a low score with combat, but again, that system, that's not...
Is not... Yeah.
So if you're
that's what I'm
wanting to
trying
play
to say.
a hack and slash, or you just want to go in and just be super cool on the battlefield, then you go play D&D or, like, Pathfinder.
Yeah.
You don't play necessarily this system or Fate Accelerated or even Fate.
Yeah. No, so I'm just saying that, like, our combat score is based off of our impression of multiple systems, not just D&D.
All right, let's jump into mechanics. If
like
simplicity is
7?
golden, I'd say like an 8.
I would say 7 again, just because of the trying to figure out how to use the ability points and how that stuff works. Now, it's not complicated, but when you don't know what you're doing at first, you're like...
Yeah, it throws you off.
Yeah, it does. So that's why I say 7.
Yeah, and again, Poppy explained a lot about that. Why they did like an ability score, ability way. And she explained that in the last episode. So, listeners, if you want to go back to last episode and hear the interview with Poppy, which was really fun, really great, she definitely explains that a little bit more. So, complexity.
So 1 is the least complex and 10 is the most, right? Is that what we're going with on this one?
Sure.
Okay. I give it like a 3.
I give it a 2. I felt like it was just, again, very streamlined for the most part. I mean, again, the ability scores, or the ability, was a little confusing, but we haven't really come across anything like that in other systems.
Which is why I give it a 3, just off
the closest would be Fate Accelerated, but I don't know how close that is. I don't think it's that close.
I don't think so.
No.
Anyways.
But yeah, so complexity, 1 being simplified, 10 being complex.
Yeah.
We've both thought it was really simple.
Yeah.
So, which is perfect for just a 2-player wanting to jump in.
And it's nice to have it be that simple because, again, with a newborn, it didn't take a lot of time to, like, really, like, plan it out, which was nice.
Yeah.
It made it easier to enjoy.
Yep. So, overall grade, as we've explained before, we kind of base the overall grade more based off just a general feel based on our conversation we're currently having and grading it and giving it a number rating.
All right.
So we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty mathematics of grading. We're just going to give a general feel, how we feel overall about the system based on the number ratings we did give.
Okay, this is a letter grade?
It's a letter grade.
Okay, should we see if we can say the same letter at the same time?
Oh, okay.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
A.
Yeah.
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 No, definitely give it an A because, again, it's a great system to introduce people to TTRPGs.
Yeah.
And
again, it's unique to its kind. I don't know very many people that are like, I just want a role play that I can do with a friend or a sibling or a significant other. Like, it is unique to its kind, and so it's really well done for what it is up front.
Yeah. No, for what it is, it does an amazing job. It's very streamlined. It's fairly simple. It just allows 2 people, whether they're newer TTRPG players just trying to get into the community and into the hobby and just trying it out, or if you're veteran players, it's perfect for any of those. It just allows people to just sit down, have TTRPG without a lot of those stresses involved with it, and so that's why we're giving it an A. It's a great system, and we definitely recommend it, and so does our son.
I was going to say he's giving his review.
So, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think we're just excited to play a different story, I guess.
Yeah. Because we'll definitely continue it.
Yeah. So,
All right.
anyways.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you're able to, leave a review, preferably a kind review, so that people can find us better on the podcast platform of their choices. So, especially if you're on like Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify that does do a rating, definitely leave a rating there. Again, preferably a kind one. If you're not able to leave a review, or you are, you can also share the podcast with your friends and family, or your coworkers, or whoever that you think would enjoy learning about TTRPGs. You can follow us on social media at Instagram, Threads, and Facebook currently. And we also are on YouTube, so if you prefer listening to us there, you absolutely can. And again, we're just so grateful for you guys for joining us and just listening and supporting the podcast that way. It really means the world. We really appreciate it. And we continue to look forward to exploring more TTRPGs here soon. So, happy rolling.